Building App Strategy in iGaming in 2024.
Thank you very much. It is really a pleasure to be here. Today I will be talking about apps in the iGaming space. So welcome everyone. So to introduce myself, I work with performance marketing for almost 20 years. For the last few years, mostly with the apps on the iGaming space. I like sports betting, casino, and different types of iGaming. I work in the past a lot with the startups. I'm investing in some startups as well, so that's kind of is defining my topics. And if we talk about apps as the iGaming space, it's like that. The topic is actually getting more and more popular, starting from the casino, but lately very heavily actually in the sports betting as well. In general, apps are getting not just the part of the content acquisition strategy, but they're getting more and more important as the part of the different purposes, for example, to sometimes authenticate users, sometimes even combine this offline-online experience as we have in this BetMGM in Las Vegas. Yeah? So we see more and more use cases when the apps are actually used quite heavily by the users. And if we go deeper, we see that actually users on the online space, they use more and more this online content, both as the apps and websites, especially in the countries like South Africa or like Norway, Greece, and we see that actually on that side we actually see more and more content created from the iGaming space as well. That's the data for the last 30 days when we see that on iOS was added almost 250 games, and almost 7% of them were new casino games. Very similar data for Android, a little bit smaller number of apps, but again, around 6% of the games were from the casino space. Yeah? So it's recognized more and more heavily by the users, but it's recognized by advertisers as the quite important channel. And we see, of course, in this case that on one side it's kind of say that the apps are more like domain of very young people. But if we look at the audience of those apps in different markets, we see that actually exactly that the main core audience of the iGaming, people between more like 25 to 45 are actually using very heavily this online content. So that's why actually, again, we see more and more reasons why actually the operators and companies are investing in the apps in that space. And if we ask ourselves, okay, we know why it's important, how actually we can approach the topic. And I think there are three very important points when we need to really remember once we're thinking about creation of the app strategy in iGaming 2024. The first is growing engagement, building quality and trust, and acting on the data and value. So if we start from growing the engagement, it's very important to understand is that the main purpose of the app is really to grow the engagement. At the end of the day, you create the app to keep the user longer, because that's the main advantage of the app. Someone is installing that once, and then you have higher chance that someone will be coming back as well, which means that is the main purpose of actually having the app. You need to have the reason for someone going back to that app as well. And we see actually in the data, because we have here the benchmarks for the next day retention rate. So is the data showing if I acquire 1,000 users today, what percentage of them are going back next day? So what people really found the reason to actually go back to the app the next day. And we see there is really huge difference between the people and the companies that are doing that best and the people who are doing that kind of average. You see that on day 2 retention, the difference between those who are really good and then average ones is 2 times higher. But for example, in the sports betting, on the day 30 retention, the difference 3 times almost. So that's why actually it's really so important to remember that's the main purpose of the app, making the people really going back and wanting to go back to that app. And then if we go deeper, even on the Google site, we did some time ago some research in different categories in the apps. And really one of the most important part of the user experience is actually the first 25 minutes of the experience. I remember that, like, everyone in the, or like not maybe everyone, but most of the people in the iGaming space, they kind of got used to the idea is really about making user go to the content, register, and do the first deposit as quickly as possible. But again, it's not the main purpose of the app. The main purpose of the app is really not someone to do deposit once, but doing that in the future as well, which means that, again, we need to remember that how to really actually make that user experience, especially at the first session, during the first onboarding, really useful to make sure that he will not just do it once, but he wants to do it in the next future. And we see, again, this first onboarding experience, making sure that it's not just prepared for the people who are in that category, that people maybe who are doing it for the first time is really important, because actually that is really distinguishing the best ones from the average ones. And then the second point is building quality and trust. Like the first one is about growing engagement. The second is about building quality and trust. And what I mean by that is that in general, the users on the internet, they have bigger and bigger challenge to understand what is fake, what is real. And there's very recent data actually showing that. You see very recent data done by the GVI, which is like probably one of the most kind of internet research, is showing that in almost all countries, people actually have the problem to understand what is real, what is fake. And if it's just that on average information in the internet, it's actually even bigger topic in iGaming, where by definition, like iGaming categories, they do not have like, the very good reputation. So that's, I think it's even more important, especially that if you go deeper, there are exactly, especially in case of apps, there are very easy and simple ways to really look at, make sure that people understand it's really good quality app. Like very simple, for example, like this quality, like this score that people are adding to the app. It's really simple way to show, okay, that's good app. And I see, for example, even by marketing campaigns, those companies that really care about those scores, you see we have 4.8 in terms of the total tips bet, and then we have 4.6 in terms of billiard and casino. It's really making it easier, not only just to make sure that people will just the good experience, but then even to acquire users. And even if we go deeper and look by the data, that's data comparing the C countries, like the sessions for the C countries, divided by the top apps. Top 10 apps by downloads, top 11 to 50, 51 by 100, and from all categories. And you see that actually almost all categories, both on iOS and on iOS, this is the Android, this is iOS. The iOS is the green one, the Android is the blue one. Like this 4.3, 4.4 is really minimum score to have kind of high quality app. And if we change the direction and we do that data by revenue, then minimum would be around 4.6. So that's why, again, thinking about this quality really matters in terms of making sure that people understand, okay, that's good quality app. And in this case, that has even the second point, because one part is about the security and like understanding that's high quality, but the second one is really making sure that people understand how you deal with the data. And for example, like in the previous panel, we had discussions around like how to make sure that we can avoid some lawsuit and so on, but it's really more and more important topic around how actually make sure that users understand how you're using the data that you are gathering, what you are doing with the registration data, why you need it. Because again, the data is showing that almost like half of the percent overall, not only in gaming, they are really afraid, okay, what you will do with my data? More and more people are actually, for example, are not allowing cookies. Why? Exactly for the same reason. Because the apps or like the website they're going to, they are not giving them good direction and good reason why they need the data. And I think that's, again, it's really very important part of building that strategy. And then the first topic, because again, we had the quality and growing engagement. Second, we have our security and the data. And the third one is acting on the value. What I mean by that? So if we look at the data, that's data based on the Google data, aggregated all Google data. And in this case, we see, in general, it's casino and slots. So actually, it's slot category. What the data shows. In all Google campaigns, most of the traffic already in slots is based on the value-based bidding. So users, like the companies, are trying to acquire like first deposit and registrations, but at the same time trying to understand which users have high potential for the future, which users have low potential. So they are not really treating the same install as other one and the same registration other one, but trying to understand which registration, which the first deposit will have high potential value, which have low potential value. And again, we see that almost half of the revenue on the Google side, half of the marketing spend goes to the value-based bidding. And why it's important? Because if we compare the data, for example, comparing that all last 4 years versus just last year, we see that the trend is very visible. That it's really not about acquiring of the user for the app, but it's more about acquiring the right user in the right time. So that's why, on one side, growing engagement, making sure that user is feeling secure and understand what we are doing with the data, and he sees the value of that app. And then finally, that we can actually use the data to get the right user. So actually, it's combination of the asset and finally the marketing. Because we see that if we compare the data, more and more companies are trying, for example, in Google, but I believe that's the kind of getting marketing standard, because the same case in all traffic sources, that you try to focus on high value users, or like try to understand the value of the user, not just, okay, let's acquire like 1 million users and then try to divide them by their value. And that would be all from my side. Again, just to summarize, I think creation of the app strategy in iGaming 2024 is again about growing engagement, because that's the apps are for. It's not about one-time visit, but it's about bringing higher chance for next and returning visits. The second one is about building quality. And the easiest way is really to show that quality by creating the app that gets really good score from the users, making sure that users feel what's happening with the data, and then finally, in marketing, just doing the marketing based on the value of the users. And that would be all from my side. Happy to connect you with the LinkedIn if someone would like to connect. Happy to answer like all the questions later as well. Thank you very much.